Welcome to this programming tutorial. In today's tutorial we're going to look at iteration. Iteration is another form of repetition, and it's quite useful in programming because rather than writing 100 lines of code, you can write 4 or 5. It lets you repeat certain amounts of code again and again and again. In these examples we're going to look at two types of iteration. We're going to look at count control iteration, and we're going to look at condition controlled iteration. Let's start with condition controlled iteration, also known as while loops. To get started, I'm going to create a variable storing the integer 5. I'm then going to create a while loop, or condition controlled iteration. To start with, I'll type while, followed by a condition, much like what you'd find in a selection statement. In this case, let's do while x is less than 5. In this condition, we're going to write print hello. This will print hello about 5 times. Now the issue here is that the condition is already met by x because x is equal to 5. So let's change this slightly by changing 5 to 0. Now there'll be a problem with this code when I run it. As you can see, if I hold down Ctrl and C to stop it, Ctrl C is a keyboard interrupt and will stop your program from running. We've got hello a lot of times. This is because my condition is always true. X is always less than 5. To fix this, inside the while loop, I'll put x is equal to whatever it currently is, plus 1. Now if I run my program, you'll notice it prints out 5 times. I could also change this so it prints out the x variable instead. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes up to 4, but we have 5 numbers in total. The x in this case could be seen as a counter variable because it counts up. You can have a condition to meet any criteria. Let's look at another example. In this case, I'll set x to equal 5. We'll set the condition to be while x is greater than or equal to 1. And then I'm going to print liftoff ... and then plus the string variable of x. Remember, if we're using the plus symbol here to concatenate both of them, we have to make sure that both of them are of the same data type. That's what the str is for. Lastly, let's make sure we meet that condition eventually by making x equal whatever it is minus 1. See, we get liftoff in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's now look at what a count-controlled iteration looks like. A count-controlled iteration is signified by a for loop, and it's known as a definite iteration because it has a finite end. To start, we're going to write for, and then we're going to define a counter variable. In this case, I'll call it x again, but you can call it whatever you want. I'll say that x variable has a range, or is in range, from 0 to 10. This means x is going to start at 0 and then automatically add 1 to itself all the way until it is equal to 10. It's like a while loop in this sense. In this case, we're going to print out x so we can see the results. I'm going to run the program over here. As you see, x gets added to every single time it iterates. If you don't specify how it adds up, it'll automatically add 1 each time it repeats. Let's now do the same example with the liftoff. We'll write liftoff in, and then plus the x variable. Now the problem here is that the liftoff now counts up by 1 each time. We want it to do the opposite. So let's swap these round. We'll make it start at 10, and we'll go until it reaches 0. And we're going to add 1 more at the end to signify how much we want the x variable to change by. In this case, we want it to change by minus 1. If you don't specify this parameter, it will automatically be plus 1. Let's have a look at the program now. And there we go. It goes from 10 all the way to 1. Let's now look at another example of a program we can write. I'll write 0 to 10 again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a for loop within another for loop. This is known as a nested for loop, or a nested count-controlled iteration. You can also do this with while loops. I need to specify a different counter variable here because I've already used x here. So let's use y instead. I will say that's in the range of 0 to my variable, x. So in this sense, we're going to run to what x is each time. So when x is 1, we run up to 1. When x is 2, we run up to 2, and so on. Inside this loop, we're going to print out a star or an asterisk. And then before we go back and repeat the nested for loop, we're going to print out an empty space. The idea is to get something that outputs like this, where it increments 1 star or 1 asterisk every single line. Let's see if this has worked. We've got 1 star on every line, but it hasn't put them together. But you can see they're grouped up and they increment by 1 every single time. This is because the print function will always add a new line at the end of it. Let's fix this by forcing the one with the asterisk not to add a new line at the end of it. We can do that by putting a comma and adding a parameter. The parameter is end equals the space. This means that the end of our print statement will have a space. By default, a print statement will usually have /n, which is a special character to mean new line. Let's run the program. And there we go. So what's happening here? We have a for loop inside the for loop that will run every single iteration. So when x iterate once, y will iterate however many times x is there. This is very useful in programming. You can see that this one, or the print statement with the asterisk, belongs in this for loop, while everything else belongs in the main for loop. Lastly, let's look at how you can iterate through a word. I'll write a word here. Let's write this word. And let's write a for loop that goes through the length of that word. We'll say for x in range 0, we could write 3 here. However, we might not always know what the word is or what the length of the word is. To fix this, what we can do is we can use a special function called len, which stands for length. By putting our word variable inside a len function, this will then turn into whatever the length of the word is. In this case, it's 3. Then I can print out x inside here. Let's run the program and see what happens. 0, 1, 2. We get 3 numbers over here because there's 3 letters. If you want to print out every single letter on a new line, we can do that as well. We can write the word here, and if you want to specify a single character inside that word or inside that string, you can use a square brackets, and then you can write a number here to specify what position you want. If I want position 0, it'll be F. If I want position 1, it'll be O. And if I want position 2, it'll be X. I could write position 0, 1, or 2, or I could use the X variable, because the X will already run through the 3 letters automatically. If I run this program, you'll see I get the 3 letters outputted line by line by line. If I now add the end parameter at the end, and I run my program, you'll see that I output the words next to each other with a space. I can remove the space by signifying the end doesn't have a space over here. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful.